I'm going to tell you a story about my French Thanksgiving. It's an amazing story. So I was about like maybe 21, 22, 23 years old or so, finishing college. I was doing my student teaching in Würzburg, Germany, which is like southern Germany, on an army base, and they had like a regular American grocery store. So right in the middle of Germany. So it was Thanksgiving time. We had like a week off of school, and I had I'm like, what do I do? I don't have any family out here, so I bought a full size turkey and all the fixings, stuffing, cranberry sauce, uh, pumpkin pie, like everything you could ever for Thanksgiving. And when I was in the States before that, I had met a woman named Christelle that was French. And we had like old school written letters back and forth to each other for years, like when we were like 18, 19, 20, or however old. And like we had like pen palled each other in like 1995 or something, like right around there for a couple years. And it was kind of cool, like I really didn't have a relationship with her other than she was a friend of mine that I'd write letters to and I would get letters back. It was real neat. And she was real good at English, so it was easy. And so I looked her up and I said, hey, can I, wrote her a letter, I had her address. I said, can I bring Thanksgiving to you in France? And so she's real good at English. So we like talked on the phone and she said, sure. Yeah, you bring the Thanksgiving meal. We'll celebrate Thanksgiving. Well, it wasn't quite that easy. So she lived in a city. I hope I get the name right. Poitiers, I think it was called. Poitiers, France, which is like on the west coast of France, really far from where I was in Würzburg, Germany. It was like I just looked on Google Maps. It's like a 15-hour train ride. That's what it says now, at least, and it was at least that far. And I had done a lot of traveling on the weekends, so I was used to the trains. But that's a long train ride, 15 hours, with like two coolers. I had two full-size coolers I bought with like a gigantic turkey in it and like a pumpkin pie and like everything you could possibly need. Like that's a long huff with coolers by yourself on a train from southern Germany to western France. So there was some confusion about the size of this turkey because they don't have turkeys in France. And I was talking to her on the phone, like this is maybe like 1997, maybe somewhere around there. So before cell phones, and you don't have a cell phone for guidance or anything. And I'm talking to her on this bizarre payphone or something, and she's like, well, how big's a turkey? I'm like, I don't know, 20 pounds, 18 pounds. But they did kilograms, so that wasn't quite sure how big that was. And she was like, well, all right, just bring it. And I'm like, do you have an oven? And she was like, no, I have a portable oven. And I said, well, portable oven, I don't think that's going to work. She said, no, trust me, it'll work. I'm like, well, she was like, how big is it? I'm like, 18-pound turkey? And she's like, had a hard time visualizing how big this turkey was. And I said, well, it's got to work. I figured like it's some kind of oven you'd put on like a dolly or something that you'd roll in and roll out, and we'd fit it in there somehow. So I get all the way, 15 hours away, get all the way to France, a long train ride, and I'm real tired after this like long ass voyage with a couple of coolers full of Thanksgiving feast in it. And we get there. It's early in the morning. I'm trying to figure where I am. There's no cell phones. There's no GPS. I'm like, I find her. Somehow I find her, which is a miracle. Find her in France, and she's got all these cool French friends. And I'm like, all right, well, we gotta get this turkey in the refrigerator. It's been in a cooler, like we gotta be careful. And I'm like, let me see this oven. And so they produced this oven. It was a toaster oven. I'm like, no, you can't cook a turkey in a toaster oven. And she was like, well, why not? We'll just cut it up into pieces. We'll do it a little bit at a time. I'm like, you don't understand. You can't cook a turkey in a toaster oven. And I'm like, oh, all this way. It was still cool to be there, but like, so we're thinking about what to do with this turkey and this meal. And she goes, I know, I got it. And she's got all these French friends. And they were like, we'll take it to the baker. I'm like, all right. So they take the turkey to the baker, and the baker cooked it, and they paid the baker, I think, with bottles of wine. They didn't, in gratitude, they gave her a couple bottles of wine. And we had this French Thanksgiving with all the fixings, and I made them go around the table and say what they're thankful for, and like this American Thanksgiving in France. It was outstanding. And I learned a lot about the French people. Earlier, we had flown into Paris, me and the other student teachers, and had like a pretty crappy time in Paris. Like, the French people were pretty assholish to us and like just not nice. And we were like young and we didn't know anything anyways, so like we probably stuck out like dumb Americans. But when I was in France with French people in Poitiers, it was like really cool. Like it was like a really cool vibe, a really good Thanksgiving, and it was like just really neat to have to. It was a little different to be in France with French people compared to being a tourist who doesn't speak French. A different vibe. So eventually, I made my way, and I had like a 3 or 4 day Thanksgiving with them. It was a real good time, and sometimes I wonder about those people back then if they remember this bizarre American bringing French Thanksgiving to France from Germany via the United States. That was my French Thanksgiving. I love that story. It's true.